Mr. Justin Bernier is a new friend. He's Chief Executive Officer of National Security Index, something near and dear to my heart because it's investing and it's national security. It's a fund company that he co-founded to help Americans invest in emerging markets without harming U.S. national security and human rights interests. He also co-founded All Source Investment Management, an independent advisor specializing in private equity and other alternative investments. He previously was an alternative investments director and portfolio manager at Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. My dad worked for Morgan Stanley. Earlier in his career, he worked in the U.S. House of Representatives. He managed national security initiatives for the chairman of the Armed Services Committee and the chairman of the Subcommittee on Intelligence, Information Sharing, and Terrorism Risk Assessment. He's a former U.S. Navy Reserve officer. Lieutenant Bernier served as the Defense Intelligence Agency's Asia-Pacific Regional Center, as well as at the Joint Intelligence Operations Center for Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. You know, all of these places where I've been in and out during my career, this guy was working there. He holds an MBA in Asset Management from Yale University and an MA in International Relations from Georgetown University and an MRP in International Security and Economic Policy from the University of Maryland. His BA is from Fordham University in New York City. Welcome, Justin, to the Economic War Room. You know, we've gotten to know you through the years. We've been at conferences together. We've had some great telephone conversations, you know, interrupting you on your way to, I think, Little League games and me on the way to, you know, meeting with state legislatures and things like that. But it's finally good to have you visiting our economic war room. It seems like you've got your own economic war room where you're managing money and securing America's national security interests.
Well, it's nice to have one or two economic war rooms in the country that are fighting on the side of America. Most don't seem to be this these days.
That's true. And they're funded by the World Economic Forum or whatever. And there are these great think tanks that are, you know, literally making wealthy people wealthier. You're giving ordinary people an opportunity to invest, hopefully increasing their wealth, but also preserving America's national security.
That's right, Kevin. We've got a process where we take out bad actors. And a lot of Americans, those that don't watch your show, that is, may be unaware just the magnitude of the Chinese military companies and the human rights violators that are inside of everyday investment products in the United States, state pension funds, retirement accounts, mutual funds, ETFs. It's all over the place. But we may be coming to a point where the government is taking a tougher stance on that. And so it's time for Americans to really wake up to this problem and start picking those bad actors out of their funds and their investment accounts.
Okay, well, we're going to do a bad, good, beautiful approach. It's the opposite of Clint Eastwood, and I did get to meet him when I lived in Carmel. Pretty cool guy. But the bad's the problem. We'll talk about that. The good is President Trump, I think, with his executive order recently, and the beautiful is your NSI solution. And we're going to do 3 segments. Let's start with the bad. What is wrong with Wall Street in regard to national security?
Wall Street does not screen out Chinese military companies and companies that use slave labor that have been sanctioned by the U.S. government. So you can imagine inside of U.S. capital markets are the very companies that make China's aircraft carriers, their fighter bombers, all sorts of missiles. In fact, the very companies that build China's nuclear weapons are inside of U.S. American accounts. Now, Wall Street takes the view that, well, if it's not illegal, we're going to do it. The problem with that is virtually nothing is illegal in terms of outbound investment. There aren't many controls whatsoever. The State Department has a few restrictions on companies that U.S. persons cannot invest in, but it doesn't include their subsidiaries, and it doesn't include most of the companies that are part of what we call the PLA value chain, People's Liberation Army value chain. These are companies that are the tip of the spear for the Chinese military as they build up the most aggressive military, the biggest buildup that we've seen since World War II. So that's really the bad in a nutshell. It doesn't even get into the human rights abusers. A lot of folks are familiar with the Uyghur forced labor camps in Northwest China. Those are in U.S. investment accounts as well.
Well, that's true, and sadly so, because what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. So we think, oh, it's just a good investment, it'll be a good return. Well, it's not a good return if China then becomes the dominant player on the planet Earth and abuses human rights across the planet. So here's one example, and we talk about Larry Fink and BlackRock and globalists versus MAGA and so forth, but managers are missing China so badly. And this example, cattle, C-A-T-L. Can you describe what that is and why it's a threat?
Yes, this is the world's largest battery maker. So most of their clients are in the automotive industry, but they're also a major supplier to the Chinese military. In particular, they're involved in the submarine modernization for the PLA Navy because those type of conventional subs they use need very large batteries. So you can imagine a better battery in a Chinese submarine results in longer range. They can be quieter, and that means they're a bigger threat to the U.S. Navy. These submarines are equipped with cruise missiles, with torpedoes. They're meant to take down U.S. ships. And so by doing business with CATL, what we're really doing is subsidizing a Chinese military company.
You know, what I'm concerned about is a recently exposed Volt Typhoon operation, which Chinese government-directed cyber actors compromised thousands of internet-connected network devices in an attempt to infiltrate Western critical infrastructure, including naval ports, internet service providers, utilities. It reflects China's peacetime efforts to penetrate U.S. critical infrastructure. If they have control of the batteries and then they have a chip that they put in them, that would be a very dangerous thing, not just for the military, but for the American citizens as well.
Chinese military companies are famous for putting backdoors into their technology. We think about Huawei, which is one of those companies the U.S. government has targeted. Huawei's ugly sister is ZTE, and ZTE is also banned from the United States, but Americans hold billions of dollars of its stock because there's no restrictions on outbound investment in Chinese military companies.
You know, this is shocking. You've got a private sector solution, but you're behind the scenes also working with the public sector, with the government, helping them to understand the details of this very serious threat. I know PresentDangerChina.org, which is a part of the Committee on the Present Danger, has covered this. They've had you on webinar after webinar explaining it. They've got some solutions. So you might, our viewers might want to go to PresentDangerChina.org and look at the President Trump's America First investment policy. In fact, we have to take a break. When we come back, Justin, I'd like to talk with you about the president's initiative to secure American investment. We'll be right back. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com. We're talking with Justin Bernier. He's got a background in the military. He's got a background in the Congress, in the lawmaking and intelligence and military issues. And now he started a free market opportunity for Americans to invest globally without fearing that they are going to be sleeping with the enemy, so to speak, paying for things that will harm America. Now, Justin, you were probably heartened like I was when we saw President Trump's national security presidential memorandum. What does it say, and why do you think he wrote that?
Well, it was a great relief to see this come out on a Friday night, and I hope that it ruined cocktail hour on Park Avenue for many Wall Street executives, because what this memorandum did was it put a warning shot out there across Wall Street saying, guess what? Outbound investment restrictions are coming, and we're going to crack down on Chinese military companies. We're going to crack down on the ostensibly civilian companies in China that support the Communist Party there. And we're going to get really tough about retirement accounts. And you can bet that in Wall Street, when people start talking about ERISA, which is a law that governs retirement accounts, they pay attention because it is big money. Now, that policy mirrors an executive order that President Trump issued at the end of his first term. And while this memo, the American First Investment Policy, doesn't yet have any legal teeth, it looks very much like an executive order 13959 that came out towards the end of the Trump administration that does have teeth and would result in over $100 billion of Chinese military company stock being thrown out of U.S. markets.
Well, stop. $100 billion. Think about those. Stocks available to Americans. People would buy them. Investment managers would put them in your portfolio, maybe not even telling you that they were doing it. And what you would end up with is funding military companies that our government has decided are a threat to our national security. So this America First investment policy is brilliant. It dovetails on the work from our mutual friend Roger Robinson, who helped bring down the Soviet Union during the Cold War because we stopped funding Russia. And when we stopped funding Russia at that time, all of a sudden they couldn't compete economically. We win the Cold War. President Reagan looks like a hero. Now it's President Trump's turn. Our threat here isn't Russia. This time the threat is China. There's no question. I mean, there's certainly a Russian threat, but China is the primary threat for anybody who's studied this and their intention. Unrestricted warfare. I've studied in detail. I've reported to the DIA where you've worked, to the Congress where you've worked, to the Naval War College, to the Naval Postgraduate School. You know, all these things that touch you. I was in there preaching the gospel of economic warfare and why we need to protect ourselves. Now President Trump has come out with a statement in the America First investment policy that can actually potentially have teeth. What would this do for America when he puts those restrictions in?
Well, one of the things that this could do, this new policy, is put the Department of Defense back at the table for sanctions. So that is what the original President Trump's investment policy did. If you got on the list of Chinese military companies operating in the United States, you'd be thrown out of U.S. capital markets. Now, the Biden administration came in a few months later. They reversed that. They kicked DOD out of the room. They said, well, the Treasury, they can consult with the Secretary of Defense if they deem it appropriate, but otherwise DOD does not have a seat at the table. If the America First investment policy leads to an executive order that brings DOD back to the table to decide which companies get sanctioned, I would venture to guess as many as $200 billion worth of securities could be thrown out. One of those companies, Tencent, is almost at $100 billion in terms of U.S. investment. So this could happen very quickly. I think Wall Street would do well, state pensions would do well to heed that warning of the America First investment policy, because look, President Trump gets up every morning, you turn on the TV, sign 5, 6, a dozen executive orders. So one of those executive orders one morning could be on outbound investment controls. We could have a lot of people sad that stocks that they once held are now half price because they can't be held by U.S. investors.
So this should be Wall Street pay heed. You're at risk. Even if the company, you think the stock might do well in the United States, if it's banned from investment for some reason, for national security reasons, it might be worth half or even less. All right, now this is important. How does the government do the research to find out which companies are good and bad, and how do you play into it?
Well, what we're finding is that the research capabilities on the government side are not great for finding out which companies are Chinese military. We do have that capability. Roger Robinson, as you pointed out, has actually built a fantastic tool to do that. We have an open source intelligence process, which really brings a lot of those skills that I had at DIA and elsewhere, brings it into the commercial market so that we can protect our investors, make sure they're not getting involved in Chinese submarines, Chinese aircraft carriers, missiles, all those type of companies that are being overlooked right now. But the America First investment policy could beef up the capabilities over at the Pentagon to be able to go in, look at who's who in the zoo, and start pulling those companies out. And if they're at the table for sanctions, I think American U.S. capital markets could be in for a bloodbath.
Okay, so the baddest the problem is that the Chinese have been exploiting us, just like the Russians did before President Reagan, just like the Nazis did before Pearl Harbor and World War II. Our potential enemies are exploiting American capital, draining American investment, investing in things and building things that is completely subjugated to the control of the Chinese Communist Party. So if the Chinese Communist Party comes in and talks to a coffee shop, they say you have to serve the People's Liberation Army, so you have to spy on everybody or put a chip under a coffee cup. They can do that. They don't in many of those cases, and that's the hard part. How do you separate between the companies that are just legitimate investments, benefiting the good Chinese people that we love and care about? We want to bring China into the world fold as a good, strong, freedom-loving nation. We don't want to see China go away or harmed, but we want to get rid of the repression of the Chinese Communist Party with their social credit scores and all of that. And here's a quote from the memorandum. It says, the PRC is increasingly exploiting United States capital to develop and modernize its military, intelligence, and other security apparatuses, which poses significant risk to the United States homeland and armed forces of the United States around the world. Now, what are you going to do at home? You buy an investment manager, you hire him, you buy an ETF, you put your money with an investor. That's it for you. You're counting on them to do something about this. The problem has been the vast majority of managers have never looked at the national security implications. I know that. I've been in the money management business my entire career, and I've been on the national security side for 15 years or more. All right, we've got Justin Bernier. Justin, I'm going to hold you over till the last segment where we can talk about the NSI solution to this very vicious problem.
I'm Kevin Sorbo. When you spend money, you consider who you're buying from and the causes they support. If you don't, then you're likely supporting companies that are trying to destroy our country and take away our freedoms. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They're a cell phone company and a good one. They offer nationwide coverage on the best 4G and 5G networks along with 100% US-based customer support. But here's the deal. Patriot Mobile's mission has nothing to do with cell phones. They carry out their mission by giving back millions of dollars every year to Christian conservative causes that are actively engaged in the fight to save America. Voting is no longer enough to beat the woke. We have to band together, support like-minded companies, and vote with our dollars. That's how we win. Stop supporting companies that want to destroy America and join Patriot Mobile today by visiting patriotmobile.com or call 972-PATRIOT.
We're speaking with Justin Bernier. We're trying to solve a problem that's been created by a combination of free markets in the United States, where I want to just look and find the best investment in the world, and then the real, very real national security and human rights implications of investing in foreign companies. I understand this. I worked for Templeton. I think Sir John Templeton was the greatest global investment manager in history. He literally founded the global investing movement. I was personally hired by him. I worked for him. We managed about $2.5 billion in a division that I headed at the end of my tenure there and helped build. I wrote the business plan for it. I love global investing. But the problem is, how do I invest globally without worrying that my money is going to be used to harm the interests of my country? Justin, you've got a solution. Tell us about it.
Well, Kevin, that was our quandary too. How do Americans invest overseas without having to worry about funding the enemy? And so we put in a process, 9 different screens, National Security Index, and we have an ETF. We're starting to actually talk to state pension funds because they're very interested in taking out this stuff too. We're at nationalsecurityindex.com if folks want to check us out there. But we have 9 different screens that are on our website. You can take a look at them. One of them is very basic. Is the company under U.S. sanctions? You wouldn't believe it, but most corporations that are sanctioned in one form or fashion, they're on a U.S. blacklist, those are free to invest in. There are no capital restrictions.
Let's stop here a second. What you just said, we're sanctioning foreign companies because they're a threat to our national security, and yet people are unwittingly investing in them through other investment managers. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
Yeah, that is correct. And it happens in a couple different ways. In some cases, an actual sanctioned company that you can invest in, they just drop down a subsidiary and they soak up U.S. capital that way. In other cases, say the Commerce Department has a block on a company. They don't want them getting their hands on any U.S. technology whatsoever, but there are no restrictions on the outbound capital. So we just do the very basic right there on screen number 1. We take out those bad actors. Now, that's something that Wall Street could easily do. They have the researchers to do it. They choose not to. Another screen that we have is this company a supplier, is it a defense firm for the PLA? Does it make weapons? Then we have a human rights screen. We go down the list. Are they involved in the South China Sea where the U.S. is at danger of anti-ship capabilities being built up on artificial reefs? So we have 9 of these types of screens. After we get through picking out all those companies, the investor is left with what we believe is a safe way to get access to global markets.
So this is the beautiful thing, is you have the opportunity to get the benefits of global investing, which I'm a big fan of, while at the same time not worrying that your capital is going to be used against human rights or against our own nation's security. Now, I also believe a lot in investing in the United States. And do you do any domestic investment?
We don't, Kevin. There's a lot of great managers out there that do that. One thing to consider, a lot of the big companies that we're investing in, they're also doing business in the United States, of course. So it's more interconnected these days, but we want to have the investors give them that opportunity for the international sleeve so they can manage how much U.S. they want and how much international.
All right. I admire and respect that. I mean, specialist global investing, when we were at Templeton, that was our specialty. And I get it. We didn't get the S&P 500 portfolios when we'd managed very often. We mostly got foreign. But I do think that there's probably a real need to look at American companies that are also sold out to Chinese interests, because there are a lot of those that we need to dig through and find out to make sure those companies aren't doing woke things that harm our values. So we've actually started an institute, National Security Investment Consultant Institute, NSIC.org, where we work with financial advisors to find people exactly like you, Justin. So if you don't have a financial advisor, you should probably find one. If you do have a financial advisor, immediately point them to Justin and the NSI, nationalsecurityindex.com. Is that it?
That's right, Kevin, nationalsecurityindex.com.
Okay, I've looked at your results, and I know I tell people all the time, don't just tout performance, but your results have held up, which is really nice to see that you can get decent performance. And I'm not marketing, I'm not recommending, I'm not doing any of that, but just looking backwards, not looking forwards, just looking backwards, your results have held up, which is always nice to see. So you're giving people global diversification without harming American national interests. Tell people more about your company. Tell them how they can buy into it, or as an ETF, or find an advisor and get a fund in their portfolio. How do people reach you?
Well, they can reach us through our website. I'm online also, Justin Bernier, LinkedIn or Twitter. And Kevin, we are looking to partner with RIAs. We want to get to know them. We want them involved with our company. institutions should also reach out to us, because what we're offering is a completely different way of approaching international investing. Not that the returns are going to be different, not that they're going to have a completely different range of companies, but that we're going to take out those bad actors so that investors can get the type of experience that they're used to without having to worry about these bad actors. When we set out to do this, we wanted to actually take on MSCI and BlackRock, take on FTSE and Vanguard in their own game, which is the index investing game. And we think we're going to be doing that. And it's starting to get a lot of attention because it just makes sense. Why would you invest in Chinese military companies if what you're trying to do is create a better future for you and your family and your country?
All right, Justin Bernier, and we're talking NSI, National Security Index. Justin, what I want to do is I'm going to hand you off to the people who make the connection, the people that write the threat assessments that we release to our financial advisor community. We'll populate that out. They'll work with you to make sure we get everything exactly right on the threat, and then how do we solve the problem? Because that's what we do in the economic war room. We don't just bring people problems. We want to bring, here's the bad, that's the problem. Here's the good, something you can do about it. And here's the beautiful. What's America like if we're supporting strong allies with investing rather than supporting potential enemies? Tell us in 30 seconds, what's the beautiful future you see for the American investor?
I see Americans, Kevin, being able to have a safe portfolio where they're not worrying about funding the Chinese military, and that act of defunding the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese military industrial complex will actually have spillover effects for national security and create a safer hemisphere over there for our troops, but altogether, ultimately take down that regime and hopefully see something better come up in its place.
That'd be a brighter future for all Americans, for your children and your children's children. Just like Reagan tear down this wall, this is our opportunity to tear down the Chinese Communist Party and return the world to liberty. All right, we're going to summarize all this in our free economic battle plan. You can get a copy at economicwarroom.com. Remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.